If someone tells you they need to get a life, tell them to join us here at Road Gang Radio with Lindsay, Lawler, and Jimmy Mack. Let's seize the day with Phone Master Dre.
Got ahead of myself, but God, I love hearing her say my name, and I love being able to seize the day with Lindsay Lawler and Jimmy Mack from the Fastport Studios.
Say my name, say my name.
Lindsay.
I just love that you love hearing your name.
Yeah, it rhymes with stuff.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Seize the Dre. Seize the Dre. The
Eat some
time has
hay.
come to Dre. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking
Hey,
about.
girl, hey, seize the Dre, sexy Jesus, Phone Master Dre over there on the ones and the twos and keeping us on the air. And speaking of on the air, we have a guest that we rescheduled. She so beautifully gave us her time again. Was going to be on with us
Hallelujah.
last week. Our fault.
Praise it.
Our fault. Technology sometimes a biatch, but luckily, because I am so excited about this conversation, not only because our next guest is her work is so brilliant and beautiful, and she lives somewhat down the street from me here in Nashville, and want to talk about her new book coming out that deals with her neighborhood. But today we've got Stacie Huckeba with us. She's an internationally recognized photographer, a writer, a speaker, a filmmaker, an all-around badass, and so much more. Her work has graced everything from the cover of Marie Claire to the pages of Rolling Stone and U.S. Today. She's photographed legends like Come On, Pearl Jam, Public Enemy, David Bowie, Dolly Parton, Robert Plant. I could go on, but the interview would be over. What makes Stacie stand out, though, this is what's so beautiful about this conversation, is the empathy she brings to an image-conscious industry. All her photos don't just capture a face. They reflect back self-worth, power, beauty in a way that people often haven't really seen themselves before, which is really beautiful. She's got a new portrait book coming out this October about her own neighborhood I mentioned, which is under gentrification. Plus, her work appears on the new Dolly book and in the upcoming Michelle Obama book out in November. She's also lived, guys, through her own incredible transformation, losing 220 pounds and finding a whole new perspective on art, body image, self-confidence. I cannot wait to dive deep into her story, especially as we talk about art, aging, self-worth. Ooh, come on. Hear more. Please make welcome to the show our new friend, soon to be yours, Stacie Huckeba. Good morning, friend.
Hi, what an intro.
Well, I just want to be friends with you. Outside of being inspired by you, I think you are the epitome of what this world needs right now. So thank you for your work, sharing it with us, and giving us your time this morning. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here this morning.
Stacie, I'm going to start with, and we've got some fun stuff to talk about too, but I want to talk about something in regards to looking at through the lens at a world that is gentrifying before your very eyes. You went through your own transformation, a physical and spiritual transformation in many ways. And, one of the things that they don't tell you, and I'm somebody who actually lost 70 pounds over the course of my life, nowhere near the heroic effort you made, but I'm a person who's lost that, and there was a lot of great things that came with it. I won't lie. I won't tell you, I want that weight back. But there were some tough things that went along with that. And I kept thinking about that in regards to a gentrification project, that people often forget that if, in fact, the area is poor or broken down, anyone who owns those homes, particularly longtime residents, see a great value to it. But there's also people who rent, get driven out. They are, with great change, great transformative change, the word change is neutral. And I was kind of wondering, given the sympathy that you shoot your subjects with, the faces where you show both pain and defiance, the full character of something, what's it been like turning a lens on a world that you've lived in all your life or lived in for a substantial amount of time to watch it change? Does the camera create distance for you that allows you to evaluate rather than be swept away by the emotions of that? Did I make any sense? I'm just obsessed with this.
It does. And I will touch on first, like the physical transformation. I think that my physical transformation was very, I've always been a photographer, but that transformation was so powerful for me because, like you alluded to and didn't go into, there are aspects of it that, I definitely wouldn't want the weight back because this world is made for straight-sized people, like airline seats, luggage, furniture. You name it. It's just easier to live in a smaller body, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. It just is a thing. But what I got frustrated with, because I'd been heavy my whole life, was that once I became more normal size, was the way that the world embraced me and treated me. And I was like, hey, wait a second. The only thing about me that's changed is literally the size of my pants. Like, I have the same capacity, I have the same intelligence, I have the same creative power, everything about me is the same. I just wear different pants now. And it made me want to lean in and showcase people beyond what we just see with our physical eyes, which is an unusual take for somebody who is a photographer by nature. And the way that translates truly into my neighborhood is sort of that way. It's like turning a lens on people and showcasing them for who they are as opposed to what you necessarily see on the outside. And when I first moved to Nashville, I moved into East Nashville, and it was right before that neighborhood. If anybody knows anything about that neighborhood, it became like the it neighborhood in Nashville, was featured in the show Nashville and all this stuff. But when I lived there, it was a very mixed neighborhood. There were artists and musicians. It had been taken down by a tornado about a decade or so before I moved in. And so most of the people that lived there were renters, low income. And then folks started moving in and buying up these properties and flipping them and turning them into this thing. And it just transformed into a neighborhood that, like, I don't even recognize anymore. And so when I moved to this neighborhood here in Madison, it felt very much the same. It's artists, it's entrepreneurs, it's very mixed as far as, like, there are a lot of Latino folks that live here. There are a lot of Black folks that live over here. There are a lot of Middle Eastern folks that live over here. And it was really important to me to be able to go out and showcase this neighborhood as it is now. Besides the fact that it's a very historic neighborhood, like in the 50s, this is where Kitty Wells lived and Hank Snow lived and Johnny Cash lived and the Carter family lived over here. And so I wanted to take a moment and reflect on this neighborhood in this moment in time before it completely transforms into Starbucks on every corner.
Yeah, and Stacie, when I first moved to Nashville 18 years ago, we lived in East Nashville for several years. That was back in 2007, and changes already happened, but it really had a feeling of storytelling, like you were part of something. And so to talk about your own book coming out that explores, as we're talking about your neighborhood under gentrification, I'm so curious how conscious or not you were in creating this book, when art and storytelling is going to spotlight these changes. How did you make sure that it stays, respectful and thought-provoking rather than becoming exploitative and, entertainment, say, for an outsider? Because that's a balance, really.
That was really important to me.
Thank you, Matt.
I have a partner on this book, Laura Amaral, who came to me right after I finished the first Dolly Parton book, and was like, hey, I've got this idea, because there was this old clock shop that used to be on Gallatin Road, and it was just this beautiful storefront, and they had these old clocks, and he's this guy who people from all over the world would send their vintage clocks to get repaired. And all of a sudden one day it was covered in neon and it was a vape shop. And she was like, oh my God, we gotta do something.
Oh my God.
Change it. And that was one of the very important topics of conversation that we had about doing this in a very respectful manner. And so we were very thoughtful in the people that we highlighted in this book. First of all, most of them, well, I should say almost all of them, are places that we frequent and shop. And so we know the owners, or we know the people that work there. And we wanted to do it in a way that we wanted to make sure that we showed the broad swath of people. Like, we also included a lot of the newer businesses and the newer business owners. Like, we wanted to acknowledge that this neighborhood is under change, but that we're not necessarily opposed to that change. We just want to honor what came before it as well. And so that was really important, that we made sure that we had this broad swath of things that were covered in the book. We have people that are low income all the way up to people that are multimillionaires. We've got a woman in there, Mrs. Howell, ironically, the millionaire Mrs. Howell. If anybody remembers.
Oh, lovey. Yeah.
The Castaways. But we've got this woman, and she's in her 90s, and she owns a ton of land, and she is a cattle farmer, and she still has her cattle farm. And we went out onto her cattle farm and shot her. So, I mean, we have down to, like, some of our more eccentric street people. Like, there's literally every demographic that you can imagine that's featured in the book, because we really wanted to show the neighborhood legitimately as it is, showcasing everybody. And I think that by including everyone, it's sort of easy to avoid that type of exploitation. And in fact, I won't get into the graphic designer, but we had some trouble with the graphic designer when we first got the graphic designer. We're having this published through Vanderbilt Press, and they chose the art department that was going to handle it. And our first pass of the book, we had to get on I was like, listen, I don't want to be rude. We need to get on a Zoom call with the graphic designer, because she really kind of leaned heavily into sort of the grit and that kind of thing. And I was like, that's not what this is. Like, we're not showcasing the poor folks of Appalachia. Like, that's not what this book is. We need to highlight the beautiful parts, and we need to highlight the more expensive parts as much as we want to highlight these other areas, because we want to really showcase everyone that lives here and the neighborhood really truly as it is in the moment.
Good on you for staying true to the authenticity and the vision behind it. I mean, you could tell you're the kind of person that would never have even been a choice, but I appreciate that as opposed to just putting it out. You know?
Yeah, and the idea of...
And I
Go
also
ahead.
think that it serves as a really beautiful historic, pardon the pun, but it really serves as a historic snapshot of like a historic neighborhood. I mean, one of the pluses, one of the upsides, one of the big selling points for me is going through Vanderbilt Press with this book was that it will live in the Nashville or the Davidson County Public Library system for perpetuity. So we'll always sort of stand as this historic document on this neighborhood at this moment in time.
One of the things that's really deeply moving about what you've said is the fact that, the idea of concern trolling is often a toxic sort of thing when people are supposedly protecting something. The idea is we've got to keep it poor. We've got to keep it broke. We've got to keep it, the sidewalks don't work and the potholes actually go down so far that there are demons in Tartarus who are coming up from them. And for me to hear you kind of talk about this is the idea of, no, you're simply capturing a moment in time to remind people that all of this stuff is just upheaval in many ways. And I was kind of curious, as someone who is a photographer who is, has beautiful photographs, how do you balance that energy with that? How do you balance the idea of getting the shot that looks gorgeous while at the same time still telling the truth about what's inside the shot?
Well, I mean, as someone who has looked through a lens, my whole world has been through a lens from the time I was a little kid. I mean, there's pictures of me. My uncle used to call me Little Miss Hollywood. I always had a camera. So I've always sort of viewed the world through this. I always thought that a photograph was like this magic thing that just like captured this moment. Like you could just freeze time. Like that seemed crazy to me as a child and has become a lifelong obsession with me. And I think that there is always beauty in truth. No matter what it is, no matter how gritty, no matter how dirty, there's always an element of it that's beautiful. Like some of the people that we've captured, like some of my street folks are, they haven't probably had a bath in a couple of months, but there is something so integrally beautiful about them just living and existing in our space. Like one of my favorite photographs in the book is of this guy named Marty. And he's just sort of famous for the neighborhood. He rides around on his bicycle. He's a houseless person. And I do a lot of homeless outreach as well anyway, so that's a subject for a whole other conversation. But he was dressed in just this green T-shirt, and he was on this purple bike, and he happened to be sitting in front of this mural that we have. And the mural itself at the top is spray painted, "No perfect people." And the mural is like purple and green and yellow and red. And he just was this beautiful... the colors were beautiful. The composition was beautiful. The statement was beautiful. So I think that if you go out into your world and no matter where you are, no matter what you're looking at, a spider web, people want to knock down a spider web, and I knock down spider webs as well. But if you really look at a spider web, they are the most beautiful, intricate, amazing creations. So I think that if you can flip the script in your mind and always try to look at a scenario and find the beauty in it, it is there. It just may not be our Western civilization's, standard of beauty, if you will. But I think that there is literally beauty in everything.
There is, and then that goes into, it all goes back to storytelling. And Stacie, on the show, I talk a lot about how I think people passively consume art, whether that be songs, books, movies, photographs, whatever it is. They don't think about, what went into taking the photo, producing the photo, putting it out, but also the life that had to be lived in order to snap that photo, in order to look like that in that photo. And I think myself as a songwriter, I think about that a lot when I'm writing a song, maybe about somebody else or somebody else's story. So the beauty here in the juxtaposition of the man that you just spoke of, Marty, or the homeless nature, the gentrification, that coupled with filming, photographing people, from Pearl Jam to Public Enemy to David Bowie to Dolly Parton. There's such a juxtaposition there. And I think what you're doing is showing us that reminding us we are all one. So when you're telling a story, say from like a Pearl Jam, when you're trying to tell a story with somebody that we all know, what we think we know, rather, a person, a public figure, how do you tell a story in that moment that is different from what we all think we know about them, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. And I think that it is about looking at no matter what the public perception is of whether it's a homeless person or whether it's Dolly Parton, is looking at somebody as a full human being. Fallible, infallible, like all of the aspects that go into a human. In fact, one of the reasons I think that I worked with Dolly for so long is my very first photo shoot that I had with her in person. Like, I had shot her live and they had used her live photos. In fact, that's the photo that'll be the cover of her next book. But the first photo shoot I had with her in studio was for her Christmas album. And when we went in, not her business manager, I hope I'm not telling too many stories. Listen,
no,
Steve
you're
Summers,
good.
if you listen to this interview, don't sue me. So when we went in, she's got a day-to-day guy with her, Steve Summers, who's just a delight of a human being. But he is her day-to-day guy. He designs all of her clothes, but he's with her all day, day in and day out, and she trusts him implicitly. And we went into that shoot, and he was like, listen, don't spend a bunch of time trying to direct her. Like, she's basically got like 3 poses, and that's it. Just like, get it and move on. And I was like, are you insane? Like, she's Dolly Parton. I guarantee you she's got more than 3 poses in her. And so when she got in front of the camera, and I just have been always one of those people, or maybe it was just because in the 90s I spent so much time with people that went on to become huge famous stars like Pearl Jam and that type of thing. But I'm not very much a starstruck kind of person in general. Now, I was excited. I was so nervous. But she's just a person, you know what I mean? And she's funny and she's affable. And so when she got in front of the camera, like, we just started playing and bantering. And because it was Christmas, she had on this red dress. And I was like, oh my God, when I was a kid, Best Little Whorehouse was like my favorite movie. And you were giving me straight Miss Mona vibes. And I started singing, it's just a itty bitty. And she immediately jumped in with me. And we were dancing and singing and playing. And when he came over to look at the shots that we were getting, he was like, oh my God. Like, you're pulling something out of her that we haven't seen in a long time. And she has said to people and has said publicly that I'm one of her favorite photographers to work with. And I think it's because I don't pigeonhole her into being like, this is a photo shoot for Dolly Parton, and so it's got to look this certain way, and she's got to be this certain thing. Like, I just allow her to be a person, just like anybody else. And I think that you have to do that whether you are dealing with a person who's houseless or with somebody like Dolly Parton, like letting them be the person that they are underneath the guise of what society has depicted them to be.
So beautiful.
I want to do just a little kind of tiny pivot from the purely sublime to something that is so ridiculous it becomes sublime in its own kind of beautiful way. This morning, it was a happy accident. We actually did a story about a man in Spain who's is a chronic world record setter. He can't help himself. He does it just in his sleep. He set the world's record for running backwards in high heels. And
oh my God.
And by the way, his calves look exactly like you think they would look. And of course, I'm referring to This Shoe Doesn't Fit. And I wanted you to talk about the editorial process of this, because some of these pictures, from the beautiful African-American man leaning against the wall to the veteran, the amputee, to people on their front lawns, to people just, and to talk about your own personal projects and the decisions you make when putting together an editorial like this. What kind of goes into it? And do you find your way through, or do you plan this? Do you say, okay, I want to do this, and then you lay it out and outline? How do you approach a project like that?
I don't think I've ever planned anything in my life.
I like you already.
Like, I just sort of, the Madison book that I've coming out, like that day at lunch, she was like, okay, we should make a list. And I'm like, I think we should just start shooting. Like, I think we should just, and literally that week, we just started walking into businesses and being like, hey, this is our idea. Would you like to be a part of it? And when it came to that particular editorial, somebody had given me, and I don't want to get political necessarily on this news show, but somebody had given me that pair of, this is kind of a funny story and a little inappropriate, but somebody had given me a pair of those Ivanka Trump shoes. She had found them in her closet, and she was like, I don't know what to do with them, and I don't want to donate them, but I figure you'll figure out something to do with them. And so I was sitting at home one night, and a friend had been over, a musician had been over, and had been smoking a little gardening variety.
Little Mary, do you want it? Little Mary, do you want it?
And after he left, I was like just examining the shoes, and they were really ostentatious. Like, they were covered in like crystals, and they were tiny. Like, they were like a size 5. Like, they were the tiniest little shoes. And then I turned them over, and it said all man-made material and made in China. And I just thought it was so funny, considering the fact that he had just been elected president, running on this whole, like, made in America, no China, like there were all of these things. And I just thought it was such a funny juxtaposition. And I was like, these shoes sort of represent, for me personally, everything that's kind of wrong with this whole administration, is that it's all just kind of horse dookie, and it doesn't really fit anybody that I know. The shoes don't fit anybody that I know. And so I put out a post on social media and was like, hey, I'm looking for a bunch of diverse folks, like, holler, that may have a problem with this administration. In what way this administration doesn't fit your life? And it was 8 days. In 8 days, I had 50 people reach out to me from all different walks of life. And then that's where the idea was born, of people trying to cram their feet into these tiny, ostentatious shoes that don't fit, and explaining, the one thing about this that didn't fit. Now, the black gentleman that you're talking about, ironically, was the first portrait that I did. And I had a flat tire, and I was on my way to my first portrait, had a flat tire, and that kid came over and helped me with my tire. I think his name was Martin. Was it Martin? I think his name was Martin.
Yeah.
And I had the shoes on me, and I just was like, would you be willing to do this for me? And he was like, yeah. And he, knew what his future held. He knew he knew the generational poverty that he was in, and was very aware of what his future held, and was very frustrated by that forthcoming thing that he just knew he was going to be a part of. And I was so struck by and that's the thing with people, they're so complex. So here's this kid who knew that he was born into generational poverty, had this idea, he worked at a fast food restaurant, knew that his future was probably going to be exactly that, and yet took time out of his day to help this white lady with this expensive camera equipment fix a flat tire. Like, the complexities of humans, I get teary thinking about it. Like, and I still wonder to this day what happened to that kid. Like, such a sweet human being, and yet was so aware of what was going to happen. And I think doing that as the first portrait really pushed me into that series, to really talk to the people that I was dealing with, because a lot of the people that were in that series, not a lot of them, but several of the people in that series did actually vote for him and were for that administration, but there were things about that administration they were frustrated with, like the gentleman in the wheelchair with one leg. Like, he was a veteran and had lost his leg in war, and was like, I'm so against his immigration policy. Like, I lost this leg in war for our rights as Americans. And he was frustrated by that aspect of the administration. And then we had the transgender woman who had worked for the government, like, she was a government employee, but because she had transitioned, had been pushed down to the basement, and eventually just completely pushed out of her job that she loved and missed and wanted to be a part of, but was so frustrated by these anti-trans policies that were in place. And so it really allowed me to explore different people's perspectives. And then, of course, we raised some money through the show that was eventually done for it. And we chose organizations that these people felt strongly about. I tried to take myself out of it and allow the money to go to the places that these folks felt strongly about sending money to. But it was a really powerful thing for me because I didn't know a lot of these people, and some of the folks that allowed me to do it, like there was a Muslim woman who got permission from her synagogue to let me into her synagogue, and like there were all of these people. It was fascinating. And in that series, it was very important for me to not have them come to me. I wanted to go to them in their environment to have them express to me what it was that didn't fit for them.
Well, that's, I mean, the epitome of knowing somebody, seeing someone and letting them be them and fly their freak flag or whatever their flag is in their comfortable scenario. We're talking with Stacie Huckeba. You can go to Stacie, that's Stacie, Stacie Huckeba, HUCKEBA.com. We will also post her website. We just have a couple minutes left, but I want to ask you quickly, Stacie, because the idea of aging, especially as it pertains to women, I mean, you've written powerfully about body image and sexism, but touching on ageism, especially for women in music, I have a dear friend who's a vocal coach here in Nashville and coaches a lot of women that names who lose their voice as they get older. And I believe, as does my friend, that it's not so much they're losing their voice because they can't sing, because we've been programmed to think we're aging out. As that pertains to anybody you film, this could really go across any industry, though. Tell me your take on aging. If it's a confidence thing, I think we choose how we wear that. Do we own it as we get older, or do we let ourselves believe that because of a certain age we cannot act, sing, dance, drive a truck, whatever it may be anymore?
Well, ironically, this is also a topic that I am knee deep into right now, because I have found myself as somewhat of a, I hate to say it sounds so corny, but I'm a bit of a TikTok influencer. And I've got around 75,000 followers or something like that on TikTok, which
that
in
counts.
the scope of TikTok is still a small creator. But the majority of my TikTok audience are women over the age of 40, and most of my content is geared towards them, about encouraging them to get dressed every day, to put on what you want to wear, to either go naturally faced or not a lot of makeup, or to just show up authentically as ourselves and to be seen in a world that somehow doesn't think that we count, and how much you do actually count, and how much you have to contribute, and how much you have to value. One of my most viral videos, I went on a rant about the new Sex and the City spinoff that is now dead. But what bothered me about it was that when I was in the age of that show, I'm the same age as the women, is that there was something very relatable in every episode that everybody could relate to. And in the new series of it, I feel like they missed so many opportunities because there was nobody in that show that people resonated with. Like, you didn't resonate with any of the characters, what they had turned them into. And they had missed such an opportunity to lean into the interesting aspects of women in their 50s and the stories that women in their 50s have to tell and the things that they're going through. And I think that's one of the reasons it got canceled, is because they just ignored the demographic and painted everybody as these bumbling tech fools who couldn't figure out how to navigate a restaurant with an iPad, and like the relationships were weird and you had to lean back on people you had dated 20 years ago, and like they just missed the mark. Because women over 40 are some of the most fascinating women that I've ever known in my life. And you think about characters like Iris Apfel, like people love her, and there's a reason, because she's fascinating and has stories to tell and has lived these lives.
People love you. Stacie, we're out of time. Listen, we could talk to you forever. Would love to have you back. Jim, I think Stacie would be a fascinating guest. Stacie, I have a show called We Should Write about the healing power of writing. I think your perspective on how we write through photos, through storytelling, could be a really interesting aspect. Everybody head on over to StacieHuckeba.com. Her new book will be out in October. You can see her work on the new Dolly book, the new Michelle Obama book coming out in November. We appreciate you so much, and I hope to continue the conversation with you soon, Stacie.
Thank you guys so much.